A disputed Himalayan territory has once again become the center of a political crisis, but this time the confrontation is not between India and Pakistan. It is between Pakistan and the people living in the territory it administers. Reports claim that at least 30 protesters have been killed in just 2 days during a security crackdown in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. Pakistan denies responsibility, while local activists accuse security forces of opening fire on peaceful demonstrators, removing bodies, shutting down communications, and attempting to suppress evidence. Independent verification remains difficult because authorities imposed an internet blackout and restricted media access. Whether those casualty figures are ultimately confirmed or revised, one thing is already clear. The unrest has exposed a deeper political struggle over who truly controls Pakistan-administered Kashmir, and why that question now matters far beyond the region itself. The latest crisis did not emerge overnight. For more than a year, the Joint Action Committee, or JAAC, has organized protests across Pakistan-administered Kashmir. The movement originally focused on economic grievances, political rights, and demands for greater local autonomy. More recently, attention shifted toward electoral reform. The main dispute centers on 12 reserved seats in the regional assembly that represent refugees from Indian-administered Kashmir who now live elsewhere in Pakistan. JAAC argues these seats allow Islamabad to exert excessive influence over local politics and reduce the political weight of residents living inside the territory. When the latest phase of elections began, thousands of protesters returned to the streets. According to JAAC, security forces responded with deadly force. Pakistani authorities reject those allegations and instead claim the protests are receiving support and direction from India. The government has also designated JAAC as a terrorist organization following earlier unrest. Because authorities imposed an internet shutdown and limited media access, many claims from both sides remain impossible to independently verify. That uncertainty makes understanding the broader political picture even more important. The first issue is representation rather than simply policing. At the center of this crisis lies a political argument over who gets to shape the future of Pakistan-administered Kashmir. JAAC believes the current electoral system weakens the influence of local voters by reserving seats for refugee communities living outside the territory. Critics argue this gives Pakistan's central government greater leverage over regional politics. Islamabad sees the issue differently. Pakistan maintains that the reserved seats represent displaced Kashmiris whose political rights deserve protection until the wider Kashmir dispute is resolved. This disagreement reflects competing visions of political legitimacy rather than a simple dispute over election procedures. For protesters, reform means greater local control. For the government, maintaining the current system supports Pakistan's broader position on the unresolved Kashmir conflict. That disagreement has now evolved into a wider confrontation over state authority. The second issue concerns information. Modern political crises are no longer fought only on the streets. They are also fought through control over information. Authorities impose communication restrictions, including internet shutdowns, making independent reporting extremely difficult. Local activists claim dozens of people have been killed and accuse security forces of removing bodies and suppressing evidence. Pakistani authorities deny responsibility for civilian deaths and argue the protests have external backing. Because journalists, independent investigators, and international observers have limited access, neither narrative can currently be verified in full. This information vacuum creates two important consequences. First, rumors spread more rapidly than confirmed facts. Second, international organizations struggle to assess what is actually happening on the ground. That explains why groups such as Amnesty International have called for communication services to be restored and for independent investigations into the reported violence. Without transparency, every side strengthens its own narrative while outside observers struggle to separate verified evidence from political claims. But this crisis extends beyond domestic politics. The third issue involves the wider Kashmir dispute between India and Pakistan. Although these protests focus primarily on governance inside Pakistan-administered Kashmir, they unfold within one of the world's longest-running territorial disputes. Both India and Pakistan claim Kashmir in full while administering separate portions of the territory. As a result, domestic unrest quickly acquires international significance. Pakistani officials have accused India of encouraging or supporting the demonstrations. JAAC strongly rejects those allegations, arguing that local demands center on governance, political rights, and electoral reform rather than support for India. Whether foreign involvement exists remains unproven publicly. However, accusations themselves influence regional politics. Whenever instability increases in either side of Kashmir, both governments become more sensitive to security concerns, border management, and political messaging. This makes local protests much more difficult to separate from the broader geopolitical rivalry between two nuclear-armed neighbors. Even movements focused on local governance inevitably become part of a larger strategic contest. For Pakistan, the immediate challenge involves restoring stability while maintaining domestic and international credibility. If allegations of excessive force continue to grow, Islamabad could face greater scrutiny from international human rights organizations and foreign governments. A transparent investigation could become increasingly important for addressing competing claims. For the Kashmir region, prolonged unrest risks deepening political polarization. If communication restrictions remain in place and negotiations fail to resume, distrust between local communities and state institutions may continue to grow regardless of how the immediate crisis ends. For India and Pakistan, the unrest demonstrates how internal developments in Kashmir can quickly acquire international dimensions. Even when demonstrations focus on local governance, accusations of foreign interference risk increasing bilateral tensions and complicating already fragile relations. For the wider international community, the situation highlights the importance of independent verification. Until communications are restored and observers gain greater access, many of the most serious allegations, including reported casualty figures and competing government claims, will remain difficult to confirm with certainty. Kashmir has long been viewed through the lens of rivalry between India and Pakistan. But this crisis reminds us that another struggle also exists: the relationship between governments and the people they govern. How Islamabad responds in the coming days may shape not only the future of Pakistan-administered Kashmir, but also the credibility of its approach to one of the world's most disputed regions. If you enjoyed this analysis, subscribe to the International Desk, and I'll see you in the next one.